The plan was simple: eliminate the leadership, destroy the nuclear program, open the oil lanes, go home. "50 days later, America has not gone home. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed. The regime is still standing, and the world is staring down the greatest energy crisis in recorded history. How does the world's most powerful military, spending over $200 billion, end up losing a war it thought it already won? In January 2026, Iranian security forces massacred thousands of protesters, at least 30,000 civilians killed in a brutal crackdown, according to Iran's own Ministry of Health. The Trump administration watched and calculated. Iran, they believed, was finally on its knees. After years of maximum pressure sanctions, the Iranian rial had collapsed. Inflation was running above 40%. The 12-day war with Israel in June 2025 had already destroyed major nuclear sites and killed top military commanders. Hezbollah was gutted. Syria had flipped. The entire axis of Iranian influence across the Middle East was crumbling. And so, on February 28, 2026, while negotiations were still technically ongoing in Oman, the US and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury. Supreme leader Ali Khamenei was assassinated. Military and government sites across Iran were struck. The logic? A leaderless, economically broken Iran would collapse from within. Regime change without boots on the ground. The Trump administration believed that maximum pressure plus military decapitation would trigger internal collapse. Kill the supreme leader, watch the regime fall. But Iran's government is not one-man system. It is a bureaucratic, institutional structure where power is distributed across factions. The IRGC does not answer to an elected president. After Khamenei's death, IRGC commanders became the de facto rulers. The result? The civilian government of Iran, which was willing to negotiate, was overruled by IRGC hardliners who are not negotiating with anyone. When Iran's foreign minister declared the strait open on April 17th, the IRGC closed it again by April 18th. Washington had no one to negotiate with who could actually enforce an agreement. Look at this map. The Strait of Hormuz is just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. On one side, the Arabian Peninsula. On the other, Iran. And Iran does not just border the strait, Iran owns the high ground. Nearly 1,000 miles of Iranian coastline runs along the Gulf. Hills, mountains, valleys, offshore islands. Mobile missiles, batteries hidden in terrain that makes detection nearly impossible. Underground bunkers carved into rock that require 5,000-pound bunker buster bomb just to penetrate. The US even used its most advanced GBU-72 penetrator munitions in March 2026, destroying underground silos along the Iranian coast. And still, the strait remained closed. Because here is the brutal geography reality. You cannot seize the Strait of Hormuz from the sea. To do that, you would need to control the northern shore, which is Iranian territory, defended by thousands of IRGC fighters on home soil. Iran understood this. America apparently did not. According to published reports from a US Situation Room meeting on February 12, 2026, 2 weeks before the war started, General Keane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, warned Trump of the risk of Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz. Trump rejected the general's assessment and assumed Iran would surrender before reaching that point. He was catastrophically wrong. Within hours of the first US airstrike on February 28, Iran activated a military strategy it had been preparing for decades. Iran's IRGC laid mines across the Strait of Hormuz. These are not simple devices. Some contain combinations of acoustic, magnetic, and pressure triggers. Some advanced mines are designed to let several ships pass before detonating, making it impossible to know if a minefield has been fully cleared. The US Navy has been deploying mine-sweeping vessels, but even the most modern sweeping techniques don't work against complex pressure mines. IRGC launched 21 confirmed attacks on merchant shipping, speedboats, anti-ship missiles, and naval drones targeting tankers across the Gulf. Iran has almost 1,000 miles of coastline from which to launch. Those launch systems are mobile. You can bomb a fixed base, you cannot bomb a truck that changes locations every 48 hours. Iran deployed electronic warfare to corrupt navigation systems of commercial vessels, making safe passage through the strait nearly impossible even without physical attack. Insurance premiums for a single transit skyrocketed overnight. Shipping companies simply stopped coming. On March 2nd, an IRGC commander transmitted a message on VHF radio across the strait. The strait is closed. If anyone tries to pass, the heroes of the Revolutionary Guards will set those ships ablaze. Within 24 hours, tanker traffic dropped 70%. Within a week, near zero. No conventional military power can solve this equation quickly because Iran's strategy does not require winning a war. It only requires making the strait too dangerous and too expensive to use. Here is what Washington failed to calculate when they launched Operation Epic Fury. 20% of the world's oil and natural gas passes through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. The moment Iran closed it, the International Energy Agency declared it the greatest global energy security challenge in history and the largest supply disruption in history of the global oil market. Within weeks, crude jumped to $116 per barrel. Jet fuel in North America spiked 95%. Airlines immediately raised prices. 70% of Gulf region food import disrupted. Consumer prices up 40 to 120%. The global economy, already fragile, was cracking under the weight of America's gamble. Let us talk about money. The Center for Strategic and International Studies, one of America's most respected defense think tanks, calculated that in the first 6 days of Operation Epic Fury alone, the US spent $11.3 billion. Every single day of this war costs American taxpayers $1.88 billion. That is $21,800 every second. A single B-2 stealth bomber sortie to Iran and back burns $5.55 million in operating cost alone, before counting the bombs it drops. Each Tomahawk cruise missiles fired cost $2 to $3.5 million to replace, and over 400 were launched in the first week alone. Shooting down one Iranian ballistic missile with a THAAD interceptor cost America $12.7 million, while that same Iranian missile cost Tehran just $500,000. America is spending 25 times more to defend than Iran spends to attack. The Pentagon has already asked Congress for a $200 billion supplemental budget, and the bill keeps climbing every second on the American taxpayers' tab. At his State of the Union in February 2026, Trump claimed Iran had restarted its nuclear program and was developing missiles capable of striking the US homeland. This directly contradicted US intelligence reports, which stated Iran posed no military threat toward the US and would need until 2035 to build such missiles. It also contradicted Trump's own previous claim that Iran's nuclear program had been completely destroyed in the 2025 strikes. Trump administration gave the public 6 different justifications for starting the war. To forestall Iranian retaliation after an expected Israeli attack, to stop an imminent Iranian threat, to destroy Iran's missile capabilities, to prevent Iran from building a nuclear weapon, to seize Iran's oil resources, to achieve regime change by bringing the Iranian opposition to power. 6 excuses, none of them fully honest, none of them fully consistent. By late March, with the strait still closed and pressure mounting, Trump began floating a new idea. Maybe we take Karg Island, maybe we don't. We have a lot of options. Karg Island, just 8 square miles of coral in the northern Persian Gulf, handles 90% of Iran's crude oil exports. It is Iran's economic backbone. Roughly half of the Iranian government's entire revenue comes from the oil that flows through Karg. The US military already struck its military facilities in April 2026, hitting more than 50 targets. Oil prices spiked 3% on that news alone, hitting nearly $116 per barrel. But here is why seizing Karg Island would be America's second catastrophic blunder. It would send oil prices to $134 to $153 per barrel, with some analysts projecting $200. Destroying Karg's export terminals would eliminate 90% of Iranian crude from a market already in crisis. Karg sits 21 miles from Iran's mainland coast. US troops deployed there would be within range of every mobile missile system that has survived every strike so far. Iran's parliament warned of raining down fire on any attempt. Seizing Iranian territory marks a fundamental escalation from airstrike campaign to military occupation. This is not a short-term operation. That is a forever war. The Council on Foreign Relations was blunt. An invasion of Karg Island could further drive up global oil prices, provoke retaliations, and endanger the lives of US military personnel. By mid-April 2026, peace talks in Islamabad collapsed after 21 exhausting hours of negotiation. America's response was decisive and revealing. Trump ordered a full naval blockade of Iranian ports, not a military reopening of the strait. A blockade, because the Pentagon had already conceded that reopening the strait by military force was not feasible. The US had tried and failed to form a military coalition. NATO declined. Asian nations declined. Gulf allies were terrified of retaliation. So America switched strategies. Blockade Iran's ports, squeeze their economy until they comply. Iran immediately responded by squeezing the strait right back. The IRGC fired on 2 Indian flag tankers, declared the strait under strict military control. Iran's parliamentary speaker said, "It is impossible for others to pass through the Strait of Hormuz while we cannot." The US is burning money blockading Iran's ports, costing Iran an estimated $435 million per day in lost trade, while Iran is costing the entire world trillions in lost energy supply. Let's say a deal gets done tomorrow. The ceasefire holds. The strait officially reopens. Don't expect the world to return to normal anytime soon. Shipping experts say when the war is officially over and the bombardments are stopped, that doesn't mean that the war is over for logistics. We will see hundreds of ships who want to call at the key ports in the Persian Gulf. Lots of containers are getting into the region. We will see disruption of supply chains going to and from the Persian Gulf. Over 2,000 ships are currently stranded in the region. About 400 vessels are holding positions in the Gulf of Oman waiting. Production lines have been halted for lack of materials. Port infrastructure in the Gulf has been damaged. Supply chains have been restructured on emergency reroutes through the Suez Canal and around the Cape of Good Hope, adding weeks to every journey. War risk insurance won't normalize quickly either. Industry experts say for insurance rates to return to pre-war levels, any resolutions must be truly permanent and security guaranteed at 100%, not partial or 90%. And those are months of continued supply shortages, continued inflation, continued pressure on American consumers who are already paying more for gas, groceries, and airline tickets than they have in years. Trump came to office promising to end wars, not start them. Those negotiations were still ongoing on February 27, 2026, the day before the bombs fell. Iran did not need to win the war militarily. It only needed to survive it and make the economic cost of continuing prohibitive for America and the world. That is exactly what it has done. The Strait of Hormuz was always Iran's trump card. Not nuclear bombs, not battlefield victories. Whether this war ends in a deal, a ceasefire, or a slow bleed, the world is already paying the price. Thank you for watching.